What if I told you that Ange Postecoglou was never going to beat Arsenal as a manager? It is 2 days after the North London derby, Arsenal against Tottenham Hotspur. This is the analysis point where I get to have a lot of fun as an Arsenal fan, as Arsenal absolutely steamrolled and gave Tottenham an absolute lesson. Roll the VT. Yes, that's right. We're here to talk about the North London derby. Gabriel leapt like an absolute salmon at a corner to make Romero look very silly. Arsenal ran out 1-0 winners at their opponent's stadium for the third year in a row, which is the first time since 1988. I'm still on cloud nine as an Arsenal fan, but that North London derby had so much in it, both to analyse how Arsenal are doing, but also the state of Tottenham currently. We'll spend some time in this video talking about that fixture and what it means for both these clubs for the rest of the season. In truth, it wasn't the goal fest that I think we're all going to see. Yes, Tottenham did have their leaky defence, and yes, Arsenal did win as I predicted, but it maybe wasn't as fast-paced or electric as we were all hoping, both as Arsenal fans or neutrals. However, Arsenal march on, and they now go 4 games unbeaten into the new season as part of my unbeaten series. They are still in it alongside Man City to see who can go the whole season without losing a game and who crowned the Premier League champion. So how did Arteta do it? How did he manage to turn up with a depleted squad, without Ødegaard, without Marino and without suspended Declan Rice, and manage to dominate the Tottenham midfield with only about 40% possession? Well, they say it's all about what you do midweek on the training pitch before you get to the weekend, right? He obviously knew how Tottenham were going to set up with a very aggressive team, not that many CDMs in there, and no idea why they didn't play Pape Matar Sarr, who I think would have been well suited against Jorginho and Partey. Instead, they went with this attacking midfield of Maddison and Kulusevski, and they just couldn't get on the ball when they needed to. They were endlessly kind of pressed all along the pitch. It was very compact. And Arteta had clearly noticed that Spurs don't play well when they're kind of penned in. They didn't get the free-flowing football they needed. And that was down to Arteta really understanding what his squad can do and his squad understanding exactly how to play without going too free about it. They all knew their role and just got on with it. Before this game, I gave 5 reasons why Arsenal would win the North London derby, and on the whole, they all came out true. So I said that Tottenham had forgotten how to beat us at their new stadium. Amazingly so, this is the 3rd victory we've had at their stadium in a row, the first time since 1988. The second thing was the Arsenal defence just doesn't concede, and we saw again an absolute masterclass from us in another clean sheet. That's 3 and 4 this year, and the only time we conceded was when we were down to 10 men. I said that Kai Havertz was unplayable, and he was, but not as a striker, but as an aggressive false 9. He managed to close down Tottenham's defence when they played out from the back, but also added an extra man in midfield for Arsenal to have the ball when they wanted it. On that note, I also said that by playing Thomas Partey and Jorginho, it would be keep ball for Arsenal whenever they wanted it, and so it was. Whenever we needed the ball, those two pivoted and held onto it very well, with Trossard coming back and Havertz coming back. And finally, I said Ange Postecoglou's system means Tottenham are incapable of keeping clean sheets. He just loads too many people forward, and that back 5 isn't what you think it is. So for the 4th time, they've only kept 4 clean sheets in their last 37, a real issue for Spurs. So there you go. The fact that I, a mere mortal on the street, an Arsenal fan living outside the Emirates Stadium, was able to predict exactly how it played out is probably an example of why Big Ange shouldn't be trusted as much as he is at that ground. And what can we say about Spurs? That defence is really not clicking. It's now only 4 clean sheets in their last 37. If you think about that, that's essentially a season's worth of football where they've only kept 4 clean sheets, which is relatively low and nearer to more relegation form than it would be top of the table stuff. The one thing that really came across from Spurs fans before the game on social media and just in general, not just this season, but actually maybe for the last year or 6 months, is that I don't think anyone in a combined 11 would get rid of Spurs' back 5. So I think all Spurs fans in general, and maybe some people outside of the club, would say Vicario is performing well as a goalkeeper. But in reality, he's kind of playing, again, a bit like a relegation keeper, a bit like someone like Pickford would, where you get a lot of saves, but ultimately you do concede a lot of goals. The difference between Vicario and Pickford is Pickford does have more clean sheets over that period by a country mile. Equally, in that defence, I think a lot of people would say that Porro was a great right back, Udogie was a great left back, and in Romero and Van de Ven, Spurs have one of their best central defensive partnerships for years, to the point that words like world class or best youngster in terms of Udogie are being bandied around Spurs quite often. My question, I think, is if you look at the stats and the amount of goals they concede, if it's not the players' fault, then it has to be the manager's fault. There is a world in which you say those defence midfielders in front of them maybe aren't up to scratch, but again, I think a lot of people really enjoyed Basuma. A lot of Spurs fans have enjoyed Pape Matar. So you're left saying, well, if it's not the players, then it has to be the manager. But equally, there is this positive support for Postecoglou that's maybe disproportionate to the results you're actually seeing on the pitch. If you want to keep that manager and you want to keep that mindset of the attacking kind of formation, you like your back five, but you're constantly conceding, where do you make the improvements? If you then carry that forward and you think, well, if you've got that back five staying the same and you're happy with Pape Matar and Bissouma, you could maybe bring in one extra player there, I guess, but largely you're saying that back seven is quite solid. You then look at the four remaining positions on the pitch. I think most Spurs fans would say they do want Kulusevski, they do want Son, and they've just spent £65 million on Solanke. That secures 3 more positions to make it 10 out of the 11 that you kind of wouldn't want to change. So the one person I think Spurs will focus on, and will probably be the fall guy, look out for it on a lot of Spurs channels, I guess, is Maddison. And maybe Maddison came to Spurs with a really quite good stats. He got a lot of goals, a lot of assists for Leicester, was on the brink of the England squad. And in the space of 18 months, they've managed to kind of ruin his career, I guess. The fact that he's still only played 33 games for Spurs is a bit of a concern because, I don't know, that's a bit too soon to be writing a player off. But if you were to write Maddison off, who would you bring in if you're Spurs to really strengthen that up? I'm not really sure. And that's also ignoring some of the big signings that have been made around Brennan Johnson and the money ploughed into him, or Audebert and the money ploughed into him, although, let's be fair, it's early in Audebert's career, so he could still prove to be a good thing. But I think realistically what I'm saying is Tottenham fans need to be more honest with themselves about the fact that their players aren't as good as they think they are. And I'm not saying that as an Arsenal fan to put them down, but you can't come up with claims that that's your best player or world class or you're not going to get better than that if in reality that defence just isn't clicking. My hunch is you either have to move the manager on quickly and get a different formation in play or a different attacking and defensive kind of relationship, or you maybe have to admit that those players aren't as good as you think they are. And I think if you move outside of Tottenham circles, most people aren't talking about Vicario or Van der Ven or Porro or Udogie, to be honest, as these amazing players. There is a chance that Udogie doesn't kick on. And I'd say the one thing in his favour is his age, maybe doing a lot of the hard work for the fact that he doesn't do that much defensively for them. If you are new around here, my name's Charles, and if you like what you're seeing, please do leave a comment, a thumbs up, and consider subscribing. Arsenal, on the other hand, do genuinely have some world-class players. In David Raya at the back, you're seeing a keeper emerging who I genuinely believe will be one of the Premier League all-time greats. The amount of clean sheets he's producing is just phenomenal, and he'll very soon be in the top 50 all-time Premier League keepers for clean sheets, which is not bad for a keeper who has maybe come a bit late, I guess, in his career to the Premier League, having played his way through the leagues. But he is performing at a level that is second to none at the moment in the Premier League. Even Alisson, Alisson's a better keeper, don't get me wrong, but maybe he is playing better for Arsenal currently than Alisson is for Liverpool currently. He's a phenomenal keeper, and I just think he'll go from strength to strength. Equally, on the left and the right, it's really working out for Jurrien Timber. Just come into the side, back from a 12-month injury or a 10-month injury. He clearly is capable of slotting straight into this defence and understands what Arteta's asking of him. On the right, Ben White is the best right-back that no one wants to admit is a right-back in the Premier League. He could go on to have 250 Premier League caps at right-back. People still say, is he a centre-back, is he a right-back, I'm not sure. There's only so much you can see these clean sheets going in week after week and not say that Ben White deserves his space in the England squad and in this Arsenal side. He's just phenomenal, and anyone around the club knows how good an influence he is. He's level-headed, he's mature for his age, and I think Ben White is going to go down as an all-time great as well if he can just continue staying in this side. And in Gabriel and Saliba, they're just the on-form centre-backs in world football, not just Premier League. They're doing a phenomenal job and they understand the task asked of them. Are they perfect? No, there's always issues with any defence, but the numbers they're stacking up is just incredible. I think in all their away games in 2024, Arsenal have only conceded, I think, 4 goals, which is just exceptional. And there's every chance that this defence will go on to not break records, because I think that's tough in this day and age where it's a goal-heavy game, but will go to prove yet again they'll have the most clean sheets and they will look as tight as they ever can. The thing that also interests me about Arsenal is the fact that actually on the bench they have enough players that are capable of doing the same job. So in Kivior, Zinchenko and Calafiore, they really do have defenders that are capable of stepping up and fitting into this when they're fit and healthy. I hope Calafiore comes back and we'll see whether Jurrien Timber keeps his role or whether Calafiore can step up. Or maybe we rotate with European football and League Cup football. I think we all want to see Calafiore get a go in the Premier League, and he's clearly been brought in for a reason to slot into that Arteta inverted left-back kind of role. Another player I want to single out is not going to blow your mind, but honestly, Bukayo Saka is turning into something really special in the Premier League. I said maybe 2 years ago, and I was laughed at by some people, that this guy is well on course to get 100 Premier League goals and 100 Premier League assists. That's a really rare club. There's only 3 players that have made it, which is Lampard, Rooney and Giggs. So he really is kind of in a world of his own for modern day footballers who put up the assists alongside the goals. And I think he's on 48, 49 goals in the Premier League and then 39 assists. He's 4 and 4 assists this season, and he just keeps delivering. There are still fans out there who say, is he world class? And the answer obviously is yes. If you produce it week in, week out in the Premier League, you're an all-time great. He's very close to 50 England caps, and he's only 23 years old. And he's about to go into a Champions League campaign where I don't see why it'd be any different for him to get those goals and assists. And against Spurs, he just knew when to take his opportunity. He's the kind of player that you can rely on to not need to perform for 90 minutes solid, but he is so clinical when he needs to be. That corner was exactly where Gabriel needed that header to be. And it's not a one-off for Saka. It's not just, maybe put him in your fantasy football team and see if he gets points. The guy is an absolute bagsman. He just puts the ball in the net or the ball in the net for other people. And I think you're seeing someone really, really special. When we look back on it, he will be, if the current trend that the Culture Ultras have put of Barclaysman, he will be whatever the equivalent of that is in 20 years. The guy just racks up assists and goals for fun. Thomas Partey is proving to be a revelation for Arsenal. Everyone said his legs might have gone or that he has off-the-pitch problems, and I think we all recognise that he's probably not going to get a contract extension. But right now, his last 9 games have yielded 8 wins and 1 draw. And I would say Thomas Partey is back. He doesn't have the kind of aura and status of someone from Atletico Madrid, who's one of Europe's best players, but he's quietly going about his business and just picking up the right kind of results. And if anything, he's a slightly earlier version of what Jorginho's become, which is a very dependable, happy on the ball, easy to pass, reclaims the ball well off the opposition kind of midfielder that just effectively wins you games. No superstar status, nothing above and beyond, just minute after minute keeping your concentration and sticking to a plan well. There wasn't really a single moment where Arsenal found themselves out of position or caught out or dwelling on the ball and making a mistake. It was just well-drilled, simple football. The few times that Tottenham did get ahead, they weren't really ever clear-cut chances. There wasn't really a world in which that highlights package has the one-on-ones that, say, Martinelli had, or a counter-attack that just caught us out. Very simply, Arsenal didn't need to sit deep. We just needed to intercept the ball at the right time. And in the centre of that midfield, you had Havertz coming back, you had Trossard coming back, and just reclaiming that ball at the right moment. They were just set up in a way that Tottenham weren't. And if Arsenal were a team that were well drilled, I'm not sure how I'd describe Tottenham, but I would say they got too into their heads that they'd play their own game. They hadn't really considered what Arsenal are about. And I think Big Ange missed the trick on how to set up properly against big sides. It's a worrying trend for Tottenham, but not only are they not beating Arsenal, but they're not really beating anyone at the moment. And they find themselves with 4 points from 4 games. Where do they go from here? The only area that I'd like to see Arsenal improve, I guess, is putting the ball in the back of the net more, but it's not really been an issue in any other game. But I would say Martinelli is maybe a player who's not as confident as he should be. He looks really good, really aggressive. He actually had a great game in terms of being like a terrier and getting the ball back or stretching the defence and moving them out the way in the same way that Havertz did. But he needs a goal or an assist to do what Saka is doing. The difference between Martinelli and Saka is Saka still turns up with the stats, whereas Martinelli maybe is in a bit of a barren spell. And I do hope for his sake he can turn that around. I hope there isn't this whole narrative of whether Sterling starts or Trossard starts or Martinelli starts. I think Martinelli is the main option, and he just needs to get the stats to go with it. A scuffed shot, a free kick, a penalty, I don't really mind just getting back into the flow of seeing that ball in the net. I even thought the refereeing was an improvement this week. So if I think about Declan Rice's red card and being in the stadium and seeing that and being disgusted, I thought it was an odd set of yellow cards in this game, but actually the ref kept a lid on it. The Jurien Timber potential red clearly wasn't a red. Debatable in my head whether it was a yellow at all, but the way Pedro Porro went down and rolled and rolled and rolled, shame on him. Shame on him. Do a better job of defending, mate. I thought there was a couple of sassy yellows. Saliba getting a yellow for picking the ball up after he committed a foul. Didn't seem that different to some of the Tottenham players who did the same and didn't get a card. But then Tottenham ended up with, 5 cards? 6 cards? Something like that. So, I'm not going to say we're hard done by a ref. The main thing was the football was allowed to flow, which is something that hasn't happened for a little while. I think overall there were maybe, 25 fouls in the whole game. Whereas I've seen games at the Emirates where it's been in the 30s. Which is a shocker, including Tottenham last season, actually, when they got their 2-2 draw against Arsenal. They were just a bunch of hatchet men. And actually, I think in the middle of the park, Bentancur now is a yellow card every game he's played this season. And Tottenham do have a habit of picking up those lazy yellows. And I do wonder if that's because when they're caught on the counter and they've committed, the way Ange Postecoglou's set up, they kind of have to commit the foul just to break the game down. And I do wonder what would have happened if Arsenal had maybe got through that midfield a couple more times without being fouled. But we are where we are, can't complain, which is nice. So what next for Tottenham? They are up against Brentford at home. I think that's a win for them, but let's be honest, if they don't get anything, well, if they don't get a win, I think the fans will turn on Big Ange. I think he was a bit arrogant after the game. He was a bit short about saying he wins trophies in his second season. I don't think he will. Not that Tottenham aren't capable of it, I just think it's too competitive a market out there, and they're not the on-form team who really have the depth like other squads. And I think Big Ange might be in trouble if they don't get the 3 points. If they do, that'll be them restarting their season. We'll see how their fixtures go for them. As for Arsenal, a huge set of fixtures. So we're still without an Ødegaard going into the Atalanta game on Thursday in the Champions League. That is a must-win, as are all Champions League games at this stage. But then at the weekend, it's to the Etihad to play Man City. And I could see that playing out similar to how it did last season, where Arsenal are pretty happy to be defensive, as were Man City, and it's about which team puts the ball in the net. The ever-impressive Haaland getting maybe a 10th of the season in the Premier League, or maybe a return for Gabriel Jesus or a Sterling debut, or Havertz getting the ball in for Arsenal. So two big fixtures for Arsenal, but I feel pretty buoyant. We're still unbeaten this season. There's only 2 points in it, and if we win, we're legitimately top of the league going into October, which would be a fantastic achievement for us. Let me know in the comments below if you've enjoyed this video and have any analysis you want to add yourself. Are you an Arsenal fan or a Tottenham fan who is very frustrated or happy about the outcome? For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Charles. I live right outside the Emirates Stadium. I would turn this camera around to show you, but I have some cladding work going on at the moment. But each week you can see me do a stadium walk around of the Emirates to get a preview of the game. And of course, I will be dumping in analysis and shorts on this channel. It would be great if you could help the channel grow. If you have a look in the corner, you will see this is a very new YouTube channel with only about 70 followers. So you can help me on that road to 100 and beyond. For now, though, be good humans, have a good week, and I'll see you soon.